Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the channel. Today I'm going to be going over the Morimoto XC lineup versus the LED Concepts ColorMorph lineup of halos. This goes for Demonize as well, but we're going to be comparing the halos. The Demonize on both products really use the same LED chips, drivers, controllers, but we're going to illustrate the differences between the popular halo ring options, and these are the RGB halo rings. These are color changing through remote control. Here we have the standard Morimoto controller. This is the only option on the Morimoto XC kit. In the future, from what I've heard, they're going to be changing it, and there will be a Bluetooth controller option. The LED Concepts currently has a Bluetooth controller. Pretty standard, generic type of controller. It doesn't look like anything fancy, but the plus side is that you get to run the application and the product directly off your phone. So the phone application gives you a lot more options. You can dial in the color to anything you like. You got music options, you got custom functions, you can sync it up to a microphone, a song that you like. Overall, you got plenty of different options versus the standard controller. You only have what's listed. So you got brightness up and down, you got some strobe, flash, fade, smooth, and some colors in between. You might ask yourself why we're not doing, apples to apples comparison with the two controllers. The two controllers really look the same. We just wanted to illustrate the two different products side by side, and also go in, a little bit in between, and go and talk about the different controller options. So with the Morimoto, this is all that's available. With the ColorMorph lineup, you would have a very similar controller giving you similar functions. But first, let's start with the colors. This is the white on both products, and they're being compared side by side. You can see neither of them really is a true white color, and that's because this is RGB. It's not RGBW, which is currently being developed by a few different companies, which will have a separate LED, a white LED chip inside of the array. So these are made up of different colors, and that's why the white isn't true. But all the other colors, most of the time people get the color changing rings for this different colors, not necessarily white. I think RGBW in the future, when it does finally come around, it'll be a very popular option, probably the most popular option, because then you can have the best of both worlds. But currently, we're going to be doing this comparison, and it's going to be mainly focusing on red, green, blue, and a few other colors in between. So camera's picking this up a little bit differently than my eyes are, but you can see the differences. The Morimoto product is using much smaller LED chips versus the ColorMorph. You have a much larger chip. I want to say the ColorMorph lineup is a little bit more true to color, but it's also, I suppose, how you interpret the color and possibly what you're looking for. If you're looking for a different type of color, maybe one appeals more to you than the other. I'm going to go into the red color. It almost seems like the ColorMorph may not necessarily be brighter, but it just seems a little bit more filled in. Like I said, the camera's picking it up a little bit different, making the colors look a little bit weaker than they really are. If you didn't have anything to compare to, I think the colors would be dead on and true. But in this case, when you see them side by side, you can tell there is a difference. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the lights. Let's get in this a little bit better. You can see the brightness. I've always thought the ColorMorph are a little bit brighter. Here, it's hard to say how they look. Maybe it's because of the larger LEDs, they appear brighter. I think they're possibly roughly the same brightness. It's just two different technologies. I'm not quite sure exactly what kind of chips or boards these are using, but I'm just going over standard observations. The Morimoto actually has some kind of gel coating, it seems, over it, and the ColorMorph looks all the same. It doesn't seem to have any kind of coating on it. Getting a little bit up close there. I'm going to turn back on the lights. So you can see, as far as the colors go, they're pretty They're pretty true to their own in their own respects, but they obviously have some differences. If you're using the Morimoto Halos and the Demonize, you obviously want to pair them up together. Same with the LED Concepts, the ColorMorph line. You're going to do Demonize and Halos, you want to make sure they're from the same manufacturer so everything matches up. The difference is with the ColorMorph, you have a lot more options. You can do any color in between. So you could see, really dial in the color that you want. Morimoto, we can change it. You know, that's supposed to be orange, and you could see it's not really quite orange. We're gonna go down a step, down a step. I think the Morimoto, personally, is good for the main colors. I think all the other colors in between really aren't quite as true as the ColorMorph. So I would say that's my main gripe with the Morimoto system right there. And once again, I think most people do want the red, blue, and green, maybe not anything in between, but that's the advantage of having the Bluetooth controller. You have a lot more options. So we're going to talk about the rings now. I'm going to disconnect the power source from these so you can see them a little bit better up close. You can see how thin that ring is for the Morimoto. I would say the ColorMorph one is probably about twice the thickness, if not very close to twice the thickness. And you can see, I know I'm repeating myself, but the boards, the LED chips are much larger. These are almost micro, very small. ColorMorph one comes with 3M tape. I mean, I would think that's more of a last case resort. I personally don't recommend or using it, but it is easy to use. The downside with the tape on both of these options are it's pretty bulky right where the wires come out. You got 4 wires coming out, so no matter what, it rarely sits flat depending on the application, the shroud or the bezel. Same with the Morimoto, you got a nice little bump right where the wires come out. Both seem to be coated right around the solder points so they don't yank out or get loose. You can't see it on the LED Concepts one because of the tape, but it is the same way. You know, going to the rest of the product, you can see the Morimoto has a nice TechFlex. I think they call it TechFlex Loom. It's gold and black, which is interesting. I probably would have just went with the black, but I think that's kind of their color scheme. If you look at the product and the label and overall the brand. What I dislike about the other product, the LED Concepts, is it's not shielded or coated in any way. It's just, you know, you could see the different color wires there. So usually we'll put some loom on it. It's going to be hidden in the engine bay. It's just, you know, I think I'm just a little bit picky with the details, but I personally rather have it coated and a little bit more stealth. So I definitely appreciate Morimoto's willingness to get that better. You can see their drivers. This is a driver box. It's fully potted inside. And this is the driver for the Halo ring. So it's got 2 outputs. We had 1 ring connected there. So it's got 2 outputs. And then it goes into the color control. You can see you got 3 outputs. So that means you can connect 3 different pieces of XC equipment here, which means we can have 3 sets of Halos if we wanted to, or 2 sets of Halos and 1 set of Demonize. If you wanted to connect more, you'd have to buy more controllers, and you can still run them off the same remote control, but you'd have to have more color controls. And you know, you got the antenna for the Morimoto, you got the power source right here. Overall, I like their system a lot. Compared to the LED Concepts, you have more of a generic style box here. Totally fine. I think for the price of the product, which I'll get into later, I'd like to see these look a little bit fancier. I know it's not a big thing. I'm more concerned with the product, the quality, and the long life. You know, that's the most important things. Because the last thing we want to do is rip apart the headlight, go ahead and replace this. If there is an issue from our experience on both products, it's really been replacing the power supply or the driver. So that's good, but I think I'd like to see a little bit, something a little bit nicer in terms of product casing, maybe some loom on there. And now the difference is these drivers can be controlled by a lot of different controllers. We have the Bluetooth controller here. I'm aware of another company's controller. I think it's XK Glow. You can do a standard controller, which looks similar to this. You actually have a lot of different options for the controllers versus Morimoto's setup is more proprietary, and it's you can only use it with the Morimoto products. So you can't go ahead and use these rings with the Morimoto drivers or color control. The Morimoto system can only be used with their own product versus these. I can actually go ahead and hook this up to a different company's controller. And with these, you're just using a generic splitter. Here we got a splitter for 2. They make 4 output splitters. You can connect 3 splitters in a row if you wanted to control all of the RGB lighting in your car. That's possible. With the Morimoto, it's not exactly the same way, but the controller when it comes to you, it doesn't have anything connected. Honestly, these connections are nothing special. I'd like to see these waterproofed. This should come in line with a fuse, some ring terminals. So I think Morimoto's system is a little bit more complete in that aspect. Versus this one, these standard RGB connectors. I mean, they're probably the most generic and standard connector available, and it's been that way for years. I personally dislike it, but I will use some dielectric grease, use some heat shrink to secure it. We haven't had any problems with it